Hey guys, welcome back for today's video where I wanted to recap the U.S. House election results for the midterms of 2018. Also taking a look back at the predictions I had made. My final projection video I did in September. I picked 10 upset races, a mixed bag of results in those certainly, and I'll go over each one of those 10 races. But also my prediction overall, I had 240 seats going to the Democrats and 195 for the Republicans, and I was within the ballpark here. I'm certainly pretty happy with how my overall prediction went, particularly in the House, maybe not so much in the Senate, and I'll make a recap video going over that as well, where I wasn't quite as accurate. But the Democrats, they had tremendous voter turnout here in 2018. That was allowing them to flip what looks to be about 40 to 41 seats over from Republican hands. You can definitely say this was a blue wave in the House. And that wave didn't necessarily carry over to as much success in the Senate as some were expecting. But again, it was a very tough map for the Democrats overall in the Senate, and it could have been much worse if they didn't have this type of Democratic voter turnout. But again, I'll make a separate video talking about the Senate. But also just to take a look at these three undecided races here, we have California's 21st Congressional District. And this was actually not even expected to be an extremely competitive result. They had the Republican incumbency advantage in what's a pretty Republican-leaning district there in the 21st of California. And it was actually called for the Republicans by many outlets on election night. But once the final vote was tabulated, it flipped over to the Democrats, and challenger TJ Cox looks like he's going to be able to go on and pick up yet another congressional district for the Democrats in the state of California. Now, for the Republicans, taking a look at New York's 27th congressional district, a very Republican-leaning district in between the Buffalo and Rochester areas in western New York. This was much closer than you would typically expect, and a lot of that has to do with the fact that Chris Collins, he's dealing with a lot of legal issues right now, and as a result, the challenger, Democrat Nate McMurray, was able to get it within about 1 percentage point, but it does look like the Republicans are probably going to be able to hold on to the 27th congressional district. And just one more result here, there was a lot of shenanigans going on down here from the Republicans in how they were tabulating these votes here in North Carolina's 9th congressional district. As a result, it looks like we're going to have a re-election there. And the fact that it's wrongdoing on the Republican side probably increases enthusiasm for the Democrats in this race. And I actually wouldn't be surprised to see the Democrats go on and win this one. I'd actually give them a slight lean to win a re-election situation in the 9th congressional district. And if that were to happen, the final tally would be 236 to 199. But if the Republicans held on in the 9th congressional district, it would be 235 to 200. So I was either 4 or 5 off in the positive for the Democrats in terms of my final prediction. Now, before I go into those 10 upset races that I picked, I just want to take a look at the difference here between the 2018 midterms and the 2014 midterms, taking just a look at the vote numbers in total. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see here we have the 2018 results. The Democrats' popular vote at about 60.7 million, the Republicans at just a hair under 51 million. So the Democrats overall almost about a 10 million vote gap in the positive for them, and just remarkable turnout here because we look back at 2014 where we had the worst turnout in modern election history in the midterms compared to this one where we had the best turnout for the midterms in modern election history. Taking a look back here in 2014 where the Republicans got about 40 million votes and the Democrats got over 35 million votes. So the Republicans winning that one by about 4.5 million votes overall. But just look at this difference in votes, 35 million to 60 million. That's a 25 million vote increase for the Democrats, which is just absolutely absurd and just goes to show you when people were talking about this blue wave election and how much enthusiasm there was on the Democrat side, that's what they're talking about. Now, taking a look at the Republicans, there was also an increased enthusiasm on their side as well, where they went on to increase their voter total by about 10 to 11 million. But again, that was absolutely dwarfed by the gains made on the Democratic side. And I hope this is a sign of things to come in future election cycles. It's great to have more people participate in the election process. And when we have more people vote, then we get better representation of exactly the will of the people in terms of who they vote for to put in Congress. Now, going back and taking a look at the map. Now I want to take a holistic look at the map and just talk about specifically where the Democrats were able to make gains. And then after that, I want to take a look at those 10 upset races that I had picked and see how the final vote tally played out in those races. So starting off, this holistic view of the map and where the Democrats were able to make most of their gains, it was primarily in suburban areas that typically go Republican. And I think a lot of this has to do with these college-educated suburban white women voters that are going from being Republicans over to Democrats, and this had a big influence. Taking a look at suburban districts in Virginia's 7th Congressional District as well as the 10th Congressional District, and then just going up the East Coast here, a lot of suburban districts in New Jersey as well as New York and some in Pennsylvania on top of that. That's where a lot of Democratic gains were made. Also taking a look at suburban districts around Detroit, Michigan's 8th Congressional District, and the 11th, that's where the Democrats were able to make some gains. Also some suburban areas around Illinois. And then again, that suburban message carried over here to the state of California, where the Democrats were able to make a lot of gains in and around the Orange County area, for instance. And again, just taking a look at the map overall, it's these areas that are outside of the urban city centers where Democrats were able to make a lot of gains. Now, we'll see if this coalition continues to hold for them in the future or not. It's just, at this point in time, those particular districts are starting to look a lot better for Democrats, in particular because of those college-educated white women that are flipping from the Republican Party over to the Democratic Party. To wrap up this video, I wanted to talk about those 10 upset picks that I had made back in September and how the final vote tally played out. So of the 10 races, I was hoping to get at least half right, so 5 out of 10. Came up just short of that, getting 4 out of the 10 right. And then of the 6 that I didn't get right, I'd say about half of them performed better than expected, and then the other half maybe performing about as well as could be expected in these very Republican districts. And it was more the long shot candidates that I had picked that obviously came up short. So starting off here, California's 50th Congressional District, FiveThirtyEight had given Amar Kampanijjar about a 16.8% chance to win this one, going against the embattled incumbent Republican Duncan Hunter, who's obviously dealing with his legal issues, but he was still able to pull this one out at the end of the day, winning by about 3 percentage points, but still a lot closer than what you would typically expect a Democrat to do in California's 50th Congressional District, which is very Republican-leaning. And again, I think the legal issues for Hunter had a lot to do with that, and maybe part of it also had to do with the type of politics that Kampanijjar brings in, a very progressive message, maybe a little bit different than the type of Democrats that typically run in this district. He did quite well for himself, getting over 124,000 votes. We'll see how this district plays out in the future if the Republicans run a candidate that maybe doesn't have the type of legal issues that Hunter is dealing with. Now moving on over to Utah's 4th Congressional District, I picked Ben McAdams. He was given a 19.1% chance to win this one back when I made the video, and he was actually able to pick up this upset over incumbent Republican Mia Love, one of the closest results that we've seen out of all these congressional districts, winning it by less than 1,000 votes. Now moving on over to Wisconsin's 1st Congressional District, this was probably one of my weaker predictions. This is Paul Ryan's old seat, and I'm actually surprised that Bryce wasn't even able to get this one within single digits. He lost by about 12 percentage points, getting 137,000 votes, but still about 40,000 votes short of the Republican, who didn't have the incumbency advantage, which is also something to note on top of that. But they had given Bryce about a 20.7% chance to win this district, and he probably came up short of expectations, especially in what was a wave election year for the Democrats overall in the House. Now moving on over to West Virginia's 3rd Congressional District, and I believe that Donald Trump had a huge impact on this race. He personally came and campaigned for Carol Miller, and this is a district that Trump absolutely dominated Hillary Clinton, winning by nearly about 50 percentage points. And there's just a lot of voters in this district that knew Trump came to the district, knew he was supporting Carol Miller, and maybe they just didn't even know a lot about Richard Ojeda. And as a result, they just voted for who Trump wanted them to. And again, I think that that had a big impact because Richard Ojeda, he's not your typical Democrat. He's very feisty, to say the least. He's anti-corruption. He's pretty progressive, and he's the kind of Democrat that you would expect could do well in rural areas around West Virginia that more corporate Wall Street type Democrats wouldn't be able to do. Also an Army veteran, very decorated, obviously, in his military service. And I just don't think that maybe he had quite enough name recognition or was able to get his message out there as much as the huge megaphone that Trump brought to this race in his support for Carol Miller. If Trump didn't have an effect and come to this district, I think at the very least it would have been a single-digit race with maybe even Ojeda picking up the surprise upset. But still, Carol Miller going on and winning this one at the end of the day by about 13 percentage points. And now moving on over to Michigan's 1st congressional district. And the Republican incumbent Jack Bergman doing very well for himself, coming through against again, another combat veteran progressive candidate here in Matthew Morgan, an anti-corruption candidate. And Morgan, he got a lot of votes here, 145,000, but still coming up well short, losing by about 12 or 13 percentage points. And this is a district that Democrats used to win about a decade or so more ago, but they just haven't been able to reclaim it, especially ever since the Affordable Care Act passed back in 2008. That's really when they started losing their grip on this district. And it's one that can be competitive, but Bergman, a lot of fans in this district, that incumbency advantage. He doesn't have the controversies that some of these other Republicans had in races that were a bit closer, and he was able to hold on to this one as a result by a fairly comfortable margin in that vote number. All right, now moving on over to Kansas's 3rd congressional district, incumbent Republican. Oh yeah, also I forgot to say, Ojeda was given a 9.7% chance to win. Matt Morgan was given an 18.3% chance to win. Now moving on over to Kansas's 3rd congressional district, Sharice Davids, just a slight underdog. She was given a 46.7% chance to win. And she absolutely crushed this one against incumbent Republican Kevin Yoder, winning it by about 9 percentage points. And this is really the story of the night for Democrats in these midterms. It's winning these suburban areas. Again, a lot of these highly educated, college-educated, white women voters going over to the Democratic Party and boosting a candidate like Sharice Davids and winning it by a convincing margin, even coming in as a slight underdog. And moving on over to New Mexico's 2nd congressional district, and now the entire state of New Mexico is in Democratic hands. Torres Small, she had a 34.3% chance to win this one, and she was able to come through by about 2 percentage points, flipping what is the most Republican district in New Mexico. And this is a trend for the Democrats here in the Southwest, where they're starting to gain a demographic advantage, and their message overall is playing well here in the Southwest, where they're starting to pick up a lot of districts in Arizona. Over the years, New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada, again, positive signs certainly for the Democrats in the American Southwest. Now moving on over to Maine's 2nd congressional district, I picked Jared Golden, who was given a 38.5% chance to win. And because of ranked choice voting, he was able to come through and take down the incumbent Republican. I love ranked choice voting because it gives people a chance to vote for third-party candidates and then not be worried about the fact that they might spoil the actual election that goes on between the top 2 candidates. And that was the case here, where once all of the ranked choice votes were counted after the initial results, Golden was able to pull into the lead and win this district at the end of the day. And now moving on over to Montana's at-large district. Now in the Senate, the incumbent Democrat John Tester was able to win this one. And then in the House, the incumbent Republican Greg Gianforte was able to hold on to this one. Kathleen Williams, respectable, got it to within about 4 or 5 percentage points. She was given a 26.5% chance to win this one. But the incumbency advantage at the end of the day played well in Montana for the Republicans in the at-large district, and then obviously with John Tester in the Senate for the Democrats. And then the last race of the 10 was Iowa's 4th congressional district. They had given J.D. Skolton an 11.5% chance to win this one, and I think he did better than many were expecting, getting it to within about 3 to 4 percentage points, losing by about 10,000 votes. And if Skolton were to somehow able to win this one in upset fashion over Steve King, the entire state of Iowa would be in Democratic hands. You can see they flipped the 1st congressional district and the 3rd congressional district, and that momentum pushed over here into the 4th district. Obviously, Steve King, a pretty controversial candidate, which also helped the Democrats, but still, King getting nearly 160,000 votes means that even though he is a pretty controversial candidate, still has a lot of support in this district, and he's a well-known commodity here. J.D. Skolton, a very progressive candidate. He was able to close the margin to a very competitive race, but still coming up just short at the end of the day. So again, guys, of those 10 upset picks, 4 were able to come through. That was in Utah's 4th Congressional District, Kansas's 3rd Congressional District, New Mexico's 2nd Congressional District, and then also Maine's 2nd Congressional District. So that's going to wrap up this video, guys. I went over the results as a whole, the predictions I made, and then just comparing this midterm back to 2014 and the stark contrast in voter turnout that we had. I hope this is a continued process that we have going into the future where there's a lot of enthusiasm and more people decide to go out and cast their ballot, because that's great for democracy. So thanks, guys, for stopping on in. Consider subscribing for more, and I hope to see you back here for future videos.